Hello everybody, welcome to your first video for Algebra 2 this semester. This is going to be section 1.1 out of the book, and we'll get our books next week. But this section definitely won't be as hard as your pretest. The pretest, one class we could have had some meltdowns. One class held it together pretty good, but I'm sure all of you were kind of like, oh my goodness, this could be really difficult. This first chapter is an intro chapter, so I think you'll be surprised with kind of the ease of this section. So let's get started. What we're going to try to do today is apply the order of operations properly, consistently, accurately, all that kind of good stuff. And we're also going to be evaluating algebraic expressions. And in a minute, you'll see on the third slide, you'll see some information regarding real number properties. And we'll go through some examples with that. So here we go. The order of operations right here is always read left to right. So when you're reading an algebraic expression, you want to go left to right, or the other concept is inside out, and we'll talk about that. So the abbreviation to kind of help you out with what order to go about within a problem is called PEMDAS. You have P-E-M-D-A-S. And I've put arrows down and try to give you a little hint as to what they mean and what to look for. So P stands for parentheses. I've got two brackets represented there, and my green bullet point here is that I want you to work inside out if there's multiple parentheses. So go inside out first. Secondly, the E. Exponents. 3 squared, evaluate that. 2 plus 5 cubed, well, you have to do your parentheses first and then cube your result. So the star says evaluate all of your powers in the proper way. Remember, parentheses is always first. Multiply and divide, M and D are together because they have the same ranking. So what we're going to say here is, it's like you're reading the book left to right. Go from the left to the right. So if it's times then divide, you'll do times and divide. Or if it's divide then times, you do divide first. So work left to right when you see both at the same time in the same brackets. The same thing goes for your A and your S, add and subtract. So you have them linked as well. And if there are both, you're going to work left to right. So if it's 2 plus 3 minus 8, you'll do 2 plus 3 first. Don't do the second one, you'll get a different answer. Okay? And maybe the old adage that's been taught for years is the please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. It's an easy way to remember this. You can make up your own, so I'm not going to try to wing that right here. But you can do your own if you'd like. So let's go to the next slide. So here's some examples. We'll go over here on number 1 first. And if you have a glare, I'll try to be clear with what I say. Number 1, we have a full problem here in black, and you have an inside parentheses and you have an outside brackets with a times 4 at the end. But what we want to do here is look at for our parentheses on the inside first. So we address the 4 plus 2. And if you see, I put a P here to note parentheses, and that changed to a 6. I did not change anything else. And I'm going to be pretty deliberate and slow with my process just to show you all the steps. So I wrote everything back out with a change 6, but now I'm noticing that PE, I'm inside the big parentheses now, and I see that I need an exponent to evaluate. So 6 squared is 36. So there's the E to kind of give you a little help symbol. I have not addressed the minus and plus yet, and the times is outside the parentheses, so it's going to be last. So I look down. 6 squared is 36. I have a minus, then I have a plus inside the same brackets. Well, if they're inside the same brackets, remember the rule. We can do them kind of at the same time, but we have to do the minus first. So 36 minus 8 is 28. And notice I put P for parentheses, and then we looked inside them and did subtraction next. So 28 plus the 3 together times the 4 on the outside. So parentheses again, and now we add. 28 and 3, 31. That's in the parentheses. We multiply this. So M is our last. So m is last because we don't have any more parentheses, and we just have one more operation to go, and we eventually get 124. Okay? So next, up here, this might be a definition that you want to write down. It says, I'll try to get out of the screen, algebraic expression is an expression that contains at least one variable. And notice on the second little bullet, I put that there is no equal sign. There's no equal sign. So number 2, I want you to evaluate 9 divided by p squared minus 7 minus x. We've got some parentheses going on and some brackets, so we'll work inside out, but it says if p equals 4 and x equals 8. So all you have to do is change your p to be 4 and your x to be 8. We plug those into the problem. So in blue, I've substituted in, and if you can read this, it says I plugged in my values. So now, just like the first problem, we address it. We go in the inside parentheses first, and I notice that my e exponent shows up. So 4 squared is 16. So parentheses and exponents were addressed from there to there. Next, I see I've got parentheses, but I need to subtract first. So it's parentheses, then it's subtraction. So 16 minus 7 is 9. And I have 9 divided by 9, so I'm doing division. So P and S was a minute ago, and now P and D divide. So 9 divided by 9 is 1. And then my final one is subtraction. So 1 minus 8 is negative 7. If you have any questions about that problem, ask in class tomorrow. Okay? So last but not least, this is probably more important than some things. This will last with us. I've got several properties up here. These are with all real numbers. The additive identity is exactly what it says. It is what you can identify using addition. So if I have an x and I add a 0 to it, I get x. If I have 0 and I add 23 to 0, I get 23. So 0, write this down, 0 is the additive identity. That's important. I showed you a different example in red right here. If we have a parentheses version plus 0, we get what was in parentheses. It just identifies what we had. Think of it that way. The same thing goes for the multiplicative identity. The multiplicative identity says C times 1 is C. And 3 is also the same as 1 times 3. We can write it different directions. But what you see here is that if you multiply anything by 1, you get the anything. So in this case, you got the C and you got the 3. So if I multiply v minus 4 in parentheses times a 1, it identifies the v minus 4. So that's the multiplicative identity, 1. So write those down, 0 for additive and 1 for multiplicative. Those are important. Thirdly, commutative property. This is confused a lot. This side gets confused more so than others. So the commutative property, it says that if you have A plus B equals B plus A, you've kind of just mirrored it. It's just switched around. So A plus B is equal to B plus A. So then 2 times 7 is the same thing as 7 times 2. It works for addition and it works for multiplication. You might want to think what it doesn't work for class, and we'll talk about that in class. What does it not work for? What operation? So if we have parentheses of 7 plus 8 and then plus 2, is that the same thing as 2 plus 7 plus 8? I think it is. 15 plus 2 is 17, and 2 plus 15 is also 17. So it works there too. Let's see, one slide over. The associative property is next. So these get confused, but commutative, you switch them around. Associative, what you're going to notice is xyz equals xyz. But what we did with the parentheses was we changed their location. So associative just means the grouping symbols associate themselves in a different location. Everything stays in the same order. x plus y, and then plus z, x plus y and z. Or 2 times 3 times 4, or 2 times 3 times 4. So if we do it in red right here, you see if we had 4 plus x and 11, that's the same thing as 4 and x and 11. And you can kind of do this in your head. 2 times 3 is 6. 6 times 4 is 24. And 3 times 4 is 12. And 12 times 2 is 24. All right? So we move on to the red, and you can see how that the parentheses just switched locations. Lastly, this will make you feel like a genius out there. Distributive property, you guys know about that. Distributive property says that if you have an outside term and you have an inside parentheses with nothing in between, that's an assumed multiplication moment. You can do a times b right there, and then a times c. I like to draw arrows too. I did it on the board, make it clean, but I like to draw arrows from a to b and a to c. And you get a and b, and you get a and c. So as an example, 5 times 2x is 10x, and 5 times negative 7 is negative 35, and you get 10x minus 35. So distributive property means you take the first term and you distribute it to the next two terms. Okay? So that's all we have for this lesson today. This actually combines 1.1 in the book and a little bit of 1.2. So you've really touched on 2 sections today. Pretty basic overall. Hopefully the pretest is a long memory now and you realize, oh, this ain't so bad. I think you'll start pretty good. So in the end, what you guys need to remember is that you always want to flip and not flop.